Hello there, my name is Ed Mansell-Lewis. I'm here at Simpson's Wine Estate with Patrick McGrath and with Charles Simpson. Patrick, you're CEO of Hatch Mansfield and Managing Director of Domaine Evremond, and you're part of this Wine Garden of England. Tell me a bit more about what Wine Garden of England is.
So the Wine Garden of England was set up in 2016, I think it was 2017 actually. It actually sort of came out of when we first planted Domaine Evremond. We asked all the significant wineries in Kent to come to the planting, because we had a lot of press there, that it was a very sort of good news story for Kent. And out of it came, we realised there were a bunch of people that liked and respected each other from the key wineries in Kent, and we decided to let's work together to promote tourism and wine tourism in Kent.
Yeah. And Charles, you're co-founder of Simpson's Wine Estate, a member of one of the 8 vineyards in the Wine Garden of England. What does the Wine Garden of England do for your business?
Well, so I guess going back to 2017 when we first had the first meeting, I think it was actually in Chapeldown at their restaurant there. You know, we were relatively new back to the UK, so we were the young guys, I guess, been able to ask all the silly questions, and we were surrounded by people who'd had a lot more experience, like the Chapeldowns, the Gusbourne, with tourism in Kent. And I remember that first meeting at Chapeldown, where we threw all of these ideas out there in terms of things that we could collectively work on, and the one that kept on gravitating to the top was tourism. And you know, with I guess the old adage is we should, you know, get people into Kent and then we should fight over them. And the old adage, I guess, where, you know, when the tide comes in, all the boats float. So being early on in I guess building our Cellar Door and wine tourism, we had a lot of experience to learn and garner for some of the people that were doing it better than we were, or for longer than we had been doing.
Yeah. And you've long been involved with some of the famous sort of French sparkling wine houses like Taittinger. I think this collaborative ethos exists in France, doesn't it?
It does, actually. I see it very strongly in France. I also actually see it in New Zealand. We look up one of the biggest brands, Villa Maria, in the UK. And actually, probably for me, the New Zealand wine industry is the best example of particularly premium wineries all working together for the benefit of brand New Zealand, helping to bring tourism to a place like Moora and Hawke's Bay, but really collective, realising Charles's point that everybody helps each other. Still commercial rivals, but sharing experiences and the common goal of educating the consumer and introducing the consumer to premium wines, whether it's from New Zealand or whether English sparkling.
And England is the newest sort of new world wine region, isn't it? And so I suppose reflecting on what New Zealand have done probably was a really useful way on reflecting on how it could be done in Kent.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think, you know, the most important thing is actually the New Zealanders, they're great people, they have a real quarter spirit between them. And they're rivals, but they're mates. And that's exactly what we got with the Wine Garden of England. We're all good friends, we see a common goal. Of course, individually, everybody's trying to sell their own wines, but not against each other. It's for the common good. And that's where I have a real strong affinity with what the Kiwis have done to what we hope we can do with the Wine Garden of England.
And just adding to that, I think what's wonderful about being in what I would describe as the most exciting viticultural place on the planet is it is a little bit, you know, of the wild, wild west. It's meaning there's not a lot of structure there, and therefore we're able to build that structure. But there's also so much interest in this rising star that is English wine. So you know, we're at this early stage. We're not competitors, and then there's enough business for everyone, and that's why working collaboratively is the obvious choice.
You almost think back to the sort of mid-80s when Australia and New Zealand arrived, that sense of excitement in the UK wine industry. And that's where we are with English sparkling, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. So we're in Barham at Simpson's Wine Estate, which you co-founded with your wife, Ruth. Why did you come to Barham?
Very simply, so we have been making wine in France for 20 years, and in Languedoc-Roussillon. And, you know, we very much had the experience we knew we wanted to be on chalk, so the holy grail of viticultural soil type. So I guess we were either looking at Kent, Sussex or Hampshire. But the research that we had done is that east was best, and just looking at, I guess, arable land even, or arable crops at maturity sort of land from east to west. So we knew it was drier, less rainfall, all of those things that were going to be really useful for growing grapes. And we knew that, you know, people talk about England being suitable for viticulture, but it's only bits of England that are suitable for viticulture. So, you know, you have, you know, I always, when people ask, what is the most important thing to be able to create world-class wines in England? It's three things, and it's, you know, from your trade, it's location, 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 or in our case, site location, and site location. Otherwise, you're going to be pushing water uphill. So we believe that Kent, and particularly East Kent, has some competitive advantages. So our sole, I guess, focus was trying to find land in East Kent.
Yeah. And the winery here has been set up, and you've been making wine for a number of years. Domaine Evrémonde will release its first vintage next year.
Yeah, September next year.
And the winery will be done in time for the first call.
Yes, we were hoping the winery would be ready for October this year, but we're going to miss it by about 6 weeks. So we took the call about 2 months ago. They're actually going to continue to make it our temporary winery, but the winery will be finished for probably December 23. So the first crush will be next year's. But we've converted an old barn, which you helped us acquire in the first place, into a temporary winery, which has done us proud for the last 3 years. But then we will have the brand new winery ready for next year.
Yeah. And what is it that drew you to where the Domaine Evrémonde vineyard is today? What's special about the site?
It's pretty much everything that Charles has said. I mean, we had the strict criteria: chalk, below 100 meters, south facing. And we were very fortunate. We bought the land from a fantastic family called the Gascoigne family. Mark and his father Charles have been growing fruit for the last 60, 70 years. We talk about the wine garden of England. Kent is the garden of England. So that's why we were always drawn naturally to Kent. And it's a very, very good fruit farm. And we're in collaboration with a family who know all about fruit farming. And they've taken to viticulture like ducks to water, and actually love it. But it was finding the right site was absolutely crucial. And as Charles says, the limitations are still very strict. You know, I think there's a danger. Everybody thinks, oh, I live in Kent, Hampshire, I can plant a vineyard. No, you can't.
What I think is a lovely story and connection. The first time, because Ruth and I have no links to this part of the world, so, you know, we were complete strangers when we drove into Canterbury for the first time. And there, right in front of us, was a sign that says, "Welcome to Canterbury," twinned with Rheims or Reims.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what an amazing connection that we just happened to be potentially buying land with a city that's twinned with one of the Champagne capitals. And of course,
Pierre-Emmanuel's father was, when he was mayor of Reims, he was the person from Champagne who was responsible for the twinning.
Yeah, it's a lovely story.
So we talk about the guest list, potential guest list, obviously for next September, and the mayor of Reims, the mayor of Canterbury, obviously top of the pops.
Yeah, indeed. You've both talked about the importance of hitting these key criteria around the growing potential of your vineyards. And that's obviously where Knight Frank have a role to play. We are privileged to be your first ever property partner. What is it you think that we can do to help the vineyards that form the wine garden of England?
Well, having just seen a very, very impressive presentation from you in terms of your analysis, and Ed is in the process of looking at another vineyard for us at the moment. And it's that very specific data that you've got. You understand winemaking, you understand viticulture, you understand business. And quite frankly, there's nobody else who's got that holistic view of what the industry needs, but also what a winery or vineyard needs in terms of site selection. And there aren't many people who can offer us that service with the commercial nous that you have, that the Knight Franks have got.
Well, I would just add to that, again, you know, you can't cheat Mother Nature. That is one of the first things you learn in agriculture, and viticulture is agriculture. And there is, you know, a lot of money coming into this industry, but you cannot buy Mother Nature. And so having that expertise of data, of knowing the appropriate places to put vineyards, if you don't get it right, coming back to that location, you will be pushing water uphill for the next 50 years of your life. So your ability to, you know, remove those pitfalls and ensure people like us are actually buying the land in the right places is going to be so important.
Great. Well, we're delighted. And, you know, I don't take it lightly that you asked us to partner with you, and I think it's a privilege. So thank you very much. The other thing I want to talk about is the future of the UK wine industry, because a lot has been written and said about how we've got to where we are, about the number of new entrants, about the number of vines in the ground. I think that story's been told. What I really want to understand is as it becomes more commoditized, which will happen, how will either the Wine Garden of England, but also, interestingly, your individual businesses, how will you find your space within that sort of busy market? What will differentiate you, and how will that sort of mould the future of the UK wine sector?
I mean, from my point of view, the crucial thing is to educate in the right way the consumer the difference between Charmat method and bottle fermented traditional method.
And just not everyone will know what Charmat method is.
So Charmat method is if like Prosecco, and there's great Prosecco, don't get me wrong, they make fantastic wine. But basically they make a still wine and then they inject carbon dioxide into the bottle and you put a cork in it. Whereas bottle fermented wine, which is the way that champagne is made, is what's known as a secondary fermentation. So you make the wine, you blend it, you then put the wine into a bottle, you put in a tiny bit of yeast and sugar, and you get a secondary fermentation, which gives you your fizz in your bottle. And the wine then ages on what we call the lees, the dead yeast cells, for 2 to 3 years. And that is what separates quality sparkling wine made by what used to be called the Maître Champenoise. Now it's called the traditional method. And that is how the vast majority of quality English sparkling wines are made. And that is very important. And the English industry needs to, educate the consumer that you can buy really good Charmat method wines for sort of £12, £15. But if you want really good quality sparkling wines, you need to look at these brands that are making wines in the traditional method, which will cost you £25, £30, but they are comparable with the best method traditional wines in the world.
Yeah.
And I guess just adding to that specifically for Simpsons, I think as the industry grows up, there's going to be different businesses who will take a view, for example, that they want to source grapes from all around the UK, and they would claim that that's their competitive advantage, that they can moderate vintage variations, whereas for someone like Simpsons, we always believe that wine has to have a sense of place, and therefore we want wines from Simpsons to taste like our valley here in the Eden Valley, so we will only make wines from grapes grown in this valley. So that's one differentiation. The other thing, which I think is, I can't understate or overstate, I should say, is the opportunity for still wines. So to date, most English producers have concentrated on English sparkling wine. It is definitely the hero product.
Yeah.
But there's a massive opportunity for still Chardonnay, still Pinots, and when you shift into that business, then we are 1% of our marketplace. So when I hear people say, "Oh, you worried about an oversupply situation," if you go to France, 99% of the wines you drink in France are French. Come to the UK, 1% of the wines we drink is domestically made.
Yeah.
So that is the headspace that you've got. You just have to think creatively. You've got to find that path that's least trodden, the one that everyone's going this way, you should be going that way, and that is the beauty of wine. Do something different.
And I think the still wine story is really important because it also helps educate the consumer that English sparkling wine and English still wine are really high quality. And a lot of people will actually probably go into it in the still route to start with. So still wines, although the focus has generally been more on sparkling, still wines play a massive role. And I'd say to anybody, I import a lot of top white Burgundy. If anybody has any queries about the quality of English sparkling wine, go and buy a bottle of Roman Road Chardonnay from Simpsons.
Yep.
And it will blow your mind in terms of the quality
I had it last
of the wine.
night. It was very nice. I had a bit too much. The thing about still wine is you can't make it in any county because you need to have really favourable growing season conditions, don't you? With sparkling wine, there's meant to be a sharpness to it. It's to be sort of minerally, I think is the word that they use. You can't get away with that with still wine so much. You need to have much riper grapes, high up potential alcohol levels, which comes from high sugar levels. And high sugar levels come from good growing conditions, specifically around sunshine, low precipitation, really good free draining soil. And that takes you to the heart of the matter around site selection and the value I think Knight Frank can bring to Wine Garden of England, which is finding suitable land. And my career began in Canterbury. I think Kent is a fabulous county for growing still wine as well as sparkling wine. What do you think, Charles, separates Kent as a growing region for other counties in the UK?
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's on chalk. So, obviously there's a lot of talk about other areas in the UK that's suitable for still wines, and most of them are east. I guess we have the advantage where we are is we're on chalk and we're east, so we've got those two levers to play on. I think the other thing we should be clear on, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of sunshine hours, and obviously Kent has a lot of that. But also there's different clones and rootstock are suitable for sparkling and some are suitable for still wine. So there's a number of things you can do, and certainly Simpsons is doing those, to concentrate on the Burgundian still wine clones that are suitable. When I say suitable, they'd be lower yielding, therefore they're producing less fruit, they're more concentrated, and therefore would have higher levels of sugar to be able to give you that. There's also things you can do in terms of vineyard management, in terms of dropping fruit, and bud rubbing or vendage en verre, as the French call it, where you're actually cutting off whole bunches, because ultimately, if you're going to make still wines, you probably have to have half the yields that you do when you have sparkling. So even on the still wine front, the wines have to be premium and expensive just because you're having to cut so much fruit off. So I think, Sunshine Hours, you certainly can't make still wines without them, but that just gets you to the starting point. And then it's that knowledge on clonal selection, and also vineyard management, and a little bit of magic in the wineries.
Yeah, quite right. And Patrick, your career has taken you to every single corner of the world in terms of wine production and wine sales. I'm interested to know what your reflections are on Kent as a county, for the production of wine, in reference to other countries where you've seen wine grown. Which country will be most similar to?
Probably New Zealand. I think in terms of the climate, it's got a maritime climate, and that's what differentiates. And talking to Alexander and Christelle from Tatton in particular, that's their biggest comparison between the site at Evremond and their vineyards around Saint-Epet. It is the fact that their Champagne is mainly continental climate, and here we're very much in a maritime climate. Most of our vineyards are 10, 15 miles away from the sea. And that's the similar that you get in, I would say, in Marlborough in New Zealand. In terms of top quality Chardonnay, top quality Sauvignon Blanc on that maritime climate. And there in Marlborough, you've got a differentiation of styles, but their common factor is that they're cool climate. Sure, you get cool climates on the coasts of Chile and places like that, but I think the New Zealand is, and actually, and the other similarities in New Zealand is you have a burgeoning tourist industry as well in Marlborough, similar to what we're trying to encourage through the Wine Garden of England, people to come to Kent.
Charles, you must have people from all over the country coming to the winery here. My question is, do you get a sense for how local people appreciate the vineyard and what you're doing, and in what way do you have sort of collaboration with them?
So a couple of things. So firstly, having had experience at our domain in France, because it's such an established wine-producing region, we don't even have a cellar door, because the last thing the locals would want to do is come and visit a wine estate, because there'll be someone in their family member who owns a domain. What's unique to our situation here in England, it would be similar to sort of New Zealand would have experienced, 50 years ago, is that the indigenous population and the locals are incredibly enthusiastic about this new fledgling industry that's growing up, and there's great curiosity to come here. So hence why, Simpsons is investing in tasting room, eventually a cellar door shop, the world's only helter-skelter slide. And what we're trying to do is, attract the largest population we can out to us for a number of reasons. Let's start with the most important one, which is that these people that you get here, they become incredible brand ambassadors for the rest of their life. And wherever they are in the world, hopefully they'll go, I've been to Simpsons, and that's what they want to drink. The second thing is that there's great profitability to cellar door sales, significantly more than traditional cellars, whether you sell through the supermarket, etc. But probably the one that the Wine Garden of England, is really focused on as a collective is, wineries and vineyards become this great gravitational pull for other businesses, whether it be fine dining or whether it be hotels and restaurants. So I think there's a tremendous contribution that collaboration of vineyards can drive towards the broader community. And some statistics I heard the other day is the domestic wine tourist spends 35% more than a standard tourist, and an international wine tourist spends 80% more than a standard tourist. So they're really high value tourism. And if you like wine, particularly fine wine, then chances are you like fine dining and you probably want to stay in a nice hotel. And certainly since we've been in this part of Kent, you're beginning to see some really fantastic restaurants and hotels prop up in and around. And I believe that vineyards are playing no small part in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone made a decision right from the start. We weren't going to have a restaurant because we actually wanted people to come and visit our cellar door when it opened, but then go to the local pubs, local restaurants, and actually help support the local community. It's really important.
That's a really good point.
And in the village of Chilham, where we are, where there just a couple of locals have opening a new shop in September, October, in a beautiful old Tudor building, and it's only going to sell English still and sparkling wine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And if I may add, in addition to helping hotels and restaurants prosper, the employment opportunity. I mean, we live in a time where we should be trying to keep jobs in rural communities, whereas everyone's going to the city to because they can't find work in what they're doing. And it's a couple of things. So viticulture has disproportionately more people than arable,
yes,
to the tune of 10. So we need vast quantities of people to help us farm in a small space. But beyond that, there's no other agricultural product that I can think of that requires winemakers, lab technicians, cellar hands, so all of the technical stuff that takes place in the winery. And then beyond that, and you look at our offices, we have all the business disciplines. We've got sales, we've got marketing, we've got finance, we've got logistics, we've got export. So we as a force can keep skilled jobs in the rural community because we need all rurals.
Yeah. Why do you think that the UK wine industry is booming now? I mean, we've had chalk in the ground since, Adam was a boy.
I think the 2003, probably climatic year, was a sea change. There were some really good wines before that, but I think when we all talk about the horrors of climate change, and indeed they are, but there's no doubt that the English viticulture industry is probably on the benefit side at the moment. I think the trend of warmer summers post 2003 put more focus on, more people started to plant vineyards. I think a lot of people started to look around other parts of the world in relatively coolish areas where vineyards have gone in. And therefore we saw a raft of people like Charles, who's got great expertise down in the south of France, actually thinking, well, actually I can make equally good wines of different style up here in Kent. And that started the sort of tractor going. But ultimately, the reason the industry is booming is that there's some really, really good wines being made. The consumer trying them, they're often trying them for the first time and saying, wow, I'm so impressed by my Roman Rose Chardonnay or Chapel Down or Balfour, whatever it may be, Bitterdon. And they're coming back for more and more. So it's actually, whereas 50 years ago, the English wine industry was a bit of a joke, now the knowledgeable consumer and even the sort of exploring consumer is actually tasting English sparkling wine, English still wine, and thinking, wow, this stuff is great.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you both today at Simpson's Wine Estate. It's the first Wine Garden of England meeting I've attended. I've really enjoyed it. Just a bit of a tester for you both. Can you name all of the 8 vineyards and wine businesses within the Wine Garden of England?
Probably easy.
Domaine Evremont.
Yeah. But probably easy to do it by alphabetical. Start with a B. So you've got Balfour and Bitterdon.
Yeah.
Chapel
Down.
D.
Domaine Evremont.
That's taking too long.
Too long.
Hussey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Balfour. Yeah.
Balfour. Yeah.
Okay. G.
Gusmore.
Yeah, very good.
Squaries.
Simpsons.
And W. Westwell.
Yeah.
All 8.
Yeah. And then it's a very strong partnership that's born out of friendship, but a common goal for a love of Kent and a sort of common aspiration for what we believe we can do together to bring wine tourists to Kent and tell the story of the great wines that are coming from the Wine Garden of England.
Wonderful. Well, Patrick McGrath from Domaine Evremont and Charles Simpson from Simpson's Wine Estate. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Can I say also on our behalf, thank you, Ed, because of what you've done. I mean, I first met you through your partner, Nigel Porter, but you now single-handedly are the champion of English viticulture, and it's fantastic.
And we do need people like yourself and like Frank to help this industry grow up. You have such an important role to play in the future of English wine.
Yeah. It's not a job. It's a hobby I get paid for. So happy to help.
I'll tell your boss that.